Hello, Sunday and peak energy type presentation this one. The opening snip is from the EIA, the American organization that is generally, it's government stuff. They're quite optimistic generally about the future. This particular one is taken from their 2010 paper, and it's called Unconventional Sources More Than Triple Globally. That's projection into the future. But conventional petroleum continues to comprise the vast majority of liquids supply. So we'll get an increase in unconventional type things, but the normal conventional straw in the ground, gluggy oil comes up, even for the EIA, is going to be the future. And in green at the top it's OPEC conventional, and at the bottom it's non-OPEC conventional, which is just oil. Now in all of these things it's always a bit complicated what any outfit might call oil, or just energy or liquids, or they're all different, but we can get an idea that OPEC conventional is to go from 56% of overall use down to 47%. So we can get a definite idea from that the EIA believes that non-OPEC countries in the future will have a diminishing share of energy output, oil output, let's call it. And OPEC conventional will go from 39 to 40. It's not going to change. So non-OPEC's going down, OPEC is staying about where it is, and the difference will be taken up by unconventional. In this chart, actually, you can see, if you look just before the black line, the vertical line, which is 2009, this is the 2010 report, 2009 is the official figures where they're sure about. There is a plateau. From 2004/5, it goes up from the start of the chart in 1990 and then kind of plateaus and dips down just before the black line, and then it takes off up again. We've always had this for most all outfits. Seem to, whatever happens in the past might be plateaus, but the future is always taking off up to the top right corner. Always has, probably always will. You've got to be optimistic about these things, and it must be said that different types of unconventional oil have been coming to market. Right, let's go with this one, which is the price of a gallon of gas at the American pumps, going back to 2001 when it averaged for that year $1.50 a gallon, to that ridiculous height of 2008 where it hit it too early. There was the Great Recession crash down, and we're back up to between 3.5 and 4. In California it's a bit more because they're having problems over there at the moment. But the actual shape of the increase in the price of a gallon of gas at the pump is unmistakable there, is it not? It's got big zigzags in it, but it is bottom left to top right. The price is going up. Right, what have we got next? Number 3 is world crude less extra heavy oil production. Extra heavy is your Orinoco, Athabasca type stuff. Take that out, and there has been from 1970 at the start of this chart a bottom left top right angle. So increasing, 45, 50, and all the way up to 70, 72. But again, we can see a plateau here, and the plateau for this one is continuing up to the more modern 2011 number, and that's world crude less extra heavy oil production, and it's plateauing from 2005 onwards, which would give us some sort of an explanation of the price increases that we had in the last chart, number 2. So let's move on to another problem. All of these have knitted together by big-brained people over at the oil drum and places like that try and put all these things together. As you can imagine, it's all very complicated. But here's another problem, and it's the old net exports problem. and you've got a zigzag thing where basically a country uses its own oil, even as its own oil that it's getting up is diminishing. It is using itself more and more of that oil, and obviously has less and less then to export. And this is what we get from this EIA chart. Very colourful, all countries at the bottom there. And we can see a bit of a bottom left, top right going on from 1985 all the way up to 2003, 4, something like that, and then that plateau again, and that's from exports, because the countries involved, like Saudi Arabia as an example, is using an awful lot of its own oil production, so it's used in the country, so it does not get exported. And that's another reason, obviously, why the price is going up in other countries, because they're not getting that export production, that export that has been used actually in the country of production. Yep. Okay. This is an interesting article about car driving in the West. From The Economist, seeing the back of the car in the rich world, people seem to be driving less than they used to, and it's a good little article if you want to follow the link, and they've bothered to make interesting paragraph titles every time all through the article. As an example, "Till her daddy takes a T-bird away" is one example of a heading, and we read in that, "But in the rich world the car's previously inexorable rise is stalling. A growing body of academics cite the possibility that both car ownership and vehicle kilometres driven may be reaching saturation in developed countries, or may even be on the wane, a notion known as peak car. Recession and high fuel prices have markedly cut distances driven in many countries since 2008, including America, Britain, France and Sweden, and many more. But more profound and longer-run changes underlie recent trends. Most forecasts still predict that when recovery comes, people will drive as much and in the same way as they have ever done. But that may not be true, and I don't believe it will be true. It's just that price at the pump is just getting at everybody's pocketbook, and they're just not able to drive as they used to. The freedom of the road has just got that nasty constraint to it that, gosh, this costs a lot of money. Now, I'm going to finish with this, which seems a jump off the subject, but I'll try and link it back at the end of it. It's about China, and it's about solar panels. I'll read the 3 paragraphs. Beijing. China in recent years established global dominance in renewable energy, its solar panel and wind turbine factories forcing many foreign rivals out of business, and its policymakers hailed by environmentalists around the world as visionaries. But now China's strategy is in disarray. Though worldwide demand for solar panels and wind turbines has grown rapidly over the last 5 years, China's manufacturing capacity has soared even faster, creating enormous oversupply and ferocious price wars. The result is a looming financial disaster not only for the manufacturers but for state-owned banks that financed factories with approximately $18 billion in low-rate loans, and for municipal and provincial governments that provided loan guarantees and sold manufacturers valuable land at deeply discounted prices, you can imagine, on and on and on. But it's not so much that, but that must be noted as it's very hard in this energy world to get things right because it is such a complicated picture. But I think even more important, up-and-coming countries like India and China have really copied the West an awful lot. And one of the things they've copied them on are roads and getting people up through scooters to small cars to big cars, big trucks. And they're using the road idea as a good one for their future. They are planning for a lot more cars. And I just think it's a huge mistake. If everything was first and foremost and always mass transit, you'd be thinking in China and India, gosh, this is really going somewhere. This is showing the West what's what. But so many of the things that these up-and-coming countries are doing are just copies of the West, not realizing the West has come to the point where they've realized that where they are now is the wrong place to be. And these new up-and-coming countries are building themselves into the wrong place in the future. But, of course, it's because the energy situation is such a complicated situation, and nobody can be expected to get it right. But they could do better. Bye.